Hey everybody, my name is Barthe. I am from Hamilton, Ontario, born and raised, and currently I am the drummer for Absorb. Okay, so what were some of my main influences? I wouldn't really say I had any people in my life that kind of pushed music on me. Um, I want to say I was in fourth grade, maybe fifth grade, and we had this musical group come through and bring a bunch of instruments to our school. And I don't know what drew me to it, but I started playing violin. And I did that for about grade 3, 4, 5, and did a few concerts in West Hamilton and one of the high schools. And so that was great. That kind of introduced me to the music scene, if you want to call it that. Classical music's very different from punk, metal, rock. But anyway, kind of opened my eyes into that. And then from there, I progressed into guitar, actually. Played guitar for a while, and then, as you do in school, you join up with other buddies that play guitar. And so my main influences for when I got into guitar were just my buddies. We would just get together, we would, set up our stuff in the garage and turn them up and play garbage for hours on end, 5, 6 nights a week, piss the neighbors off, whatever. Do that till the lights, till the sun went down, pack it up and go in for the night. All right, so just to add to influences, so that same buddy I used to hang out with in grade school and early into high school, I was still playing guitar at the time, and we were getting a few songs together, and we're like, we need a drummer, man. Nobody played drums. Everybody played guitar. Well, I said, well, I don't know. I'll ask my mom. Maybe I can get some drums. So we went to Absolute Music. Remember that place?
Yeah.
And rented a set of drums, and so that got me into drums. So now I'm 14 or 15, and I'm probably not much better now than I was then. But anyway, just slamming away at them, and we had fun, and we did this and we did that, and probably that love of industrial music and heavier music. As we started playing, we would start listening to more things. We got into a lot of White Zombie, a lot of Ministry, and we kind of stayed to that electronic, just kind of gothy metal, if you want to call it that. We had a crappy old 4-track tape recorder.
PV probably.
No, it wasn't a PV. I don't know what the hell it was, but we would spend time in his basement. So now we had moved over to his basement, his parents' basement, and we would just throw shit down.
Yeah.
And so now we're grade 9, grade 10. We were able to actually get somebody who knew a little bit what was going on to come and record for us, and we did 3 or 4 stupid songs, but whatever. It was leaning more towards metal, and then high school ended and we went our separate ways, yada yada yada. But then a friend of mine that I met in high school, we started going to shows together, and it was almost a weekly event. I do remember how we got into a band called Chore. You ever heard of Chore?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So I ended up, there used to be a leather shop down on King Street by John,
Yep.
and right above that leather shop was an apartment. And I was 16 years old, and I went with another buddy of mine anyway, and I don't remember who we were going to see, but this band Chore played. Definitely a heavier band, heavy rock band, but it kind of really opened my eyes, and I drew myself to their drummer, Dave Dunham.
Did you do anything with Sonic Onion?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Chore was a big Sonic Onion band back in the day. And so anyway, I was drumming at the time. I played drums at the time. And I kind of locked in on the Chore drummer. So me and this other buddy of mine started going and seeing Chore every opportunity we could go see them. They were a great band out of Dunville. If you guys ever had a chance to see them, it was awesome. Broke up in 2001 or 2, broke my heart, but whatever. Through seeing Shore, we also saw a band called Shallow, North Dakota. Another band, they were absolute juggernauts.
Everybody knows them.
Yeah, they were doing the real heavy doom stuff that kind of like I do now and Absorb, real slow, real heavy, way before anybody was doing that. You know, and Tony Giacomi, I think I'm pronouncing that right, Giacomi. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
I've had a few times to talk to him, and I'm like, man, like you play so hard, like you're so awesome. Like he's like, and he was singing at the same time too. I mean, it was amazing. And he's like, I'm like, what were your influences? And he goes, honestly, it was the Beatles. He goes, I ripped Ringo Starr off for so much stuff, and I'm like, I mean, I don't hear that, but okay.
Yeah.
And if you ever listen to any of our stuff, I rip Tony off quite a bit. And kind of I steal his technique where, you know, when you're playing your drums, I'm aiming at the head down here on the bottom, the resonant head, when I'm hitting the batter head, and just hitting it as hard as I can, you know. And it was really great. Shore and Shallow, North Dakota were 2 excellent Hamilton bands that, you know, we've seen them play to 4 people. Sometimes even just me and the one buddy of mine that went. And it was amazing. And if you guys ever had a chance to see them, that's awesome. If you didn't, you missed out. But yeah, so Dave Dunham and Tony Giacomi were probably 2 of my biggest influences in metal drumming, yeah. Okay, so what got me into punk metal and hardcore? So I want to say when I was about maybe 12, I ended up hooking up with a buddy of mine in school who had some older sisters who were already in high school. So we were kind of exposed to a lot of different music at that time. Some big ones when I was, you know, a lot of industrial, a lot of Ministry, 9 Inch Nails, if you want to call it industrial at the time. Skinny Puppy, Frontline Assembly, things like that. So that kind of really got me into heavier music. Now also when I was 10, that was 1991. So what happened in 1991? What albums came out? Metallica, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Chili Peppers, all those great albums from '91, right? So those all kind of came out at the same time, or maybe a little bit before the story I just told. But anyway, that kind of opened my eyes to rock and roll. You know, and prior to that, I had somehow gotten Back in Black by AC/DC when I was about 9 years old. And, you know, I was still a kid at the time and hadn't really figured out what I liked, but I kind of gravitated towards AC/DC. I mean, it's just straight 4/4. You can bob your head to it, you know what I mean? Everybody knows AC/DC. Whether you want to admit you like it or not, you can still sing an AC/DC song, right? So anyway, that's what got me there. And then, you know, again, now with my buddy, with his older sisters and the music that she kind of brought around, or they brought around, got us into some more heavier stuff. And then we go into high school. You just start going to shows like Transit Union Hall. I'm sure you've been there, you know.
Played there.
That was a great time. Go to all the Battle of the Bands there. So now you're introduced. There was a lot of punk back in those days. A lot of great bands, and I'm sorry I can't remember any of their names right now, but I mean there was so much good music came out of those battles of bands back in the day. And yeah, it just kind of grew from there. Like it was just going to, I mean, when we were that age, going to as many shows as you could when you're 14, 15 years old. And then, you know, when I got my license and I could drive and get out on my own, and it was just, we went and saw whatever you could see, man, anywhere you could go to see it. So yeah, that's kind of what got me down that path, was just being introduced to that music. 1991 was a big year, and it just kind of snowballed from there. You know, grunge, I was huge into grunge. Like, you know, it was, you either like Nirvana or you didn't like anything, and I like Nirvana. So, but yeah, I don't know, just kind of blossomed from there. All right, so the first concert I attended, I grew up in the 80s. when I was young, and my mom was big into a lot of the pop music. Phil Collins, Toto.
Toto's good.
Oh yeah. So, 1989 or 90, I don't remember what year it was. Genesis was coming through town, Toronto, and I went and that was my first concert. I got to see Genesis, Phil Collins. I don't remember if Gabriel was in the band for that tour or not, but that was my first show. And funny enough, the next year Phil Collins came around, and we went and saw Phil Collins the year after. So I got to get off on my 80s pop, whatever the hell you wanted to call that, upbringing. And that was my first foray into an actual concert. As for my first punk show, I'm having a hard time putting a date on it, but I do remember going to the first two Warped Tours, whether that was 94 or 95. We've been trying to figure it out tonight. We think it's 95. So, back in the days when all those great punk bands that everybody grew up with, no effects, like I got to see Bad Religion twice. Yeah, man, like it was so good, right? Those were back in the years when Bad Religion had the barbecue at the end of the show, So funny enough, I guess you could also consider that my first, not only punk but also rock music and metal. Like there was some new metal bands, as we were talking about on that bill. Deftones certainly fit that bill. They were there, they rocked it out. I've seen them many times since then. But yeah, that was my first real foray into punk rock and hardcore. But one thing I want to add, when I was before that show, so I guess that would be my first rock show, I did get to see the Rolling Stones in 1993. That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. All right. So, favorite shows I ever saw. Seen a lot of cool ones. Top of the list, 3, 4, 5 years ago, I got to see Gwar. That was game-changing. I don't care if you like Gwar's music or not. That's right, me and my buddy went. If you ever get a chance to go see Gwar, man, do it. I don't care if you like their music. If you don't like their music, doesn't matter. It's the music is kind of promoting the show they put on, the theatrics of it. We very well back from the stage and still were covered with a considerable amount of fake blood. Amazing show. Go see me if you ever get a chance. Another good one, Rob Zombie, believe it or not, depending on what your opinions are of Rob Zombie, puts on one hell of a stage show. Very in tune with getting the crowd involved. At least the theatrics of it. He spends a lot of money on the robots, the a 30-foot drum riser, all the screens. Great time. If you get a chance, go see him. Dillinger Escape Plan. Breaks my heart they're not around anymore. They were probably one of the best shows you could ever see anywhere at any time. I've seen them 4 or 5 times. Amazing. I got to see Refused when they came around. That was another great show. That was another one off my list. I got to throw them in there. I got to see Motorhead. That was amazing. That was amazing. Let Lemmy rest in peace, right? Yeah. So, but yeah, just a lot of these old. I don't know, man. Like back in the day when they were popular, like Motorhead. I don't know if you call it punk or metal, whatever. Refused definitely used to be called punk. I don't know if they are anymore, but it's just a lot of this stuff. That's all these bands that are coming around now that we grew up with. That maybe I didn't get a chance. I was too young back in the day. I'm going to see them now. Anyway, those are some of my favorites. Those are some of the ones that really stuck out in my head. And they were a lot of fun too. Great musicians. All these bands I mentioned also really put together a really good show. It's really tight. It's not just them being idiots on stage and that's what made it memorable. No, it's great shows, great fun. Meshuggah, another real good one. I've seen them a few times. So good. Clutch, Very good. They seem like really chill dudes. I seem like really chill dudes, and they really, you know. I like it when a lot of bands will talk to the audience. Clutch does that well. But yeah, just good times. And then I kind of have a man crush on Jag Tana from I'm Mother Earth. So I like to go watch I'm Mother Earth play because I like to watch Jag do his thing on his guitar. I've actually talked to him on Facebook. He's a pretty cool dude that he'll actually, you know, answer messages from fans on his Facebook page. But anyway, yeah, those are some of the concerts that stick out of my mind. And if you get a chance to see any one of the bands I mentioned, do it. If some of the bands I mentioned aren't around anymore and you didn't see them, well, I'm sorry, man, you missed out. But they were great shows. All right, so the craziest shit I've ever seen at a show. Years and years ago, there was a punk band out of the Hamilton, maybe they're from Hamilton, the Hamilton area, I don't know, called Pantychrist. All women, just some really good, stripped down, nasty ass punk music. And man, they were a lot of fun. And they had an album release show at the Underground. And things went off the rails real quick with that one. 2 songs in, the Underground, actually the staff there shut the show down. There was a lot of nudity. There was a lot of bodily fluids on stage. It went off the rails real quick, that was pretty nuts, man. I mean, aside from that, I mentioned him already. Guar is just an optical smorgasbord, man. I mean, it's a feast for your eyes. It's a feast for your senses with all the blood that's coming at you, all this, that, and everything. And every band that they take with them, it's the same thing. Like every other band, it's the same thing. It's all this visual storytelling with music behind it. Just crazy. Some other crazy things I've seen. I mean, I mentioned them earlier. Dillinger. If you ever got to see Dillinger, it was just an attack on your senses from start to finish. It was ultra violence. It was just ultra. It was, you know, the guitarist was coming into the crowd. The vocalist was coming into the crowd. If you were up front, you were getting hurt. You were part of the experience of what Dillinger was. There was a couple shows where the Red Chord was the same thing. They were another metal band in the mid 2000s. Same deal. Just ultra violence. Just attack your senses. Just it was an experience seeing that show. To bring it down to another level, there was a local Hamilton artist called Mayor McCaw back in the 90s, early 2000s. We were at the Underground, and he decided he was going to play that show naked. So we got to feast our eyes on that. And that was pretty fun. That was at the Underground as well, and there was an entire room of people just going, what the fuck is going on? But anyway, he did it. Good old Mayor McCaw. Back around that time, I'm going to bring up another local Hamilton band. Back around that time, the Underground was kind of doing all the shows in Hamilton, and there was these guys that would always hang out on the back wall and watch every show that happened. So we were seeing, you know, all the Hamilton bands, like I've mentioned, Chore, Shallow, that night at Mayor McCaw. All these bands, and these guys would just stand on the back wall and watch. Well, it turned out that band was Mare, another Hamilton band. They were really crazy and, you know, not really they were a metal band that was really kind of avant-garde. They were really out there, very technical, very good at their at the tools of their trade, the instruments they played. They had a Sony Discman on stage with them, and back in the early 2000s, that was kind of how that was pre-sample, well, not pre-sample pads,
yeah.
but I mean, you know, people didn't really use sample pads back then, so they had a Sony Discman, and he would hit play, and he would sit there and listen to this ambient music and these ambient noises, and it would flow, and it would take you to, you know, if you closed your eyes, it would take you somewhere else, and then all of a sudden this pounding, technical, slow metal would start, and if you ever got a chance to see Mary, you'll understand what I mean. But they were a great time. But those were some of the best shows that kind of stand out in my mind. The Hamilton show, the Hamilton scene, back late '90s, early 2000s was a pretty fun place to be. Pretty cool place to be. A lot of good stuff happened, and I hope you were there for it. All right, past and current bands. So I was in a couple of cover bands. I know it's a bad word, cover bands. But that's kind of what I did through the early 2000s, early 2010s. Paid the bills. I mean, say what you want, man. Cover bands make the money. And that's what we did. And then I got into a band where I met a few guys in the scene. We played a show at the Underground. That really wasn't much of anything. We were called Mala. I think we played 3 shows total. Kind of a metalcore-ish thing, groove metal, hammer, or well, it doesn't matter, groove metal. But anyway, that's where I met the guitarist for the current band I'm in, Absorb, Jeff Luckel, and we played. They played in a band called Laser Piss that night. So that's where I first ran into Jeff, and then about a year later, after Mala had run its course, I answered a Facebook post of a band looking for a drummer, and they had posted this video of this real doomy song, and you know, the video was what you would expect out of a doom band. It was a bunch of skulls and like weed and shit. So I'm like, hey, this sounds pretty cool. So I reached out, and it was Jeff Luckel, and came down, and I messaged him. I said, hey, you know, this is pretty cool. Can I come and try out for you guys? Like, yeah, man, like, come down next week. And I was like, okay. So I listened to the song a bunch. I kind of I memorized it, and then I went and jammed it out, and that was 10 years ago this past February. That song that we jammed was called Hatred, which is on our first album. So you can go back and listen to that. That was the kind of the song that just kicked it out, or, you know, opened my eyes to Absorb. We weren't called really anything back then. Actually, our early name was Two Smokes, for any fans of the Trailer Park Boys. You might get that gag. So we played a handful of shows under the name as Two Smokes, and then we became Absorb, and we play sludgy, slow, shitty metal, and that's what we do. We've been doing it for a long time. We've gone through vocalists. We seem to chew them up, spit them out pretty quick. We got a guy named Eric now. He's a real sweetheart. We met him actually during the pandemic. We played a show at Staircase, and we didn't have a vocalist at all. And our old vocalist who had left the band, Wally Warwick, he just said, hey, I'll come and do the show for you guys. We're like, yeah, man, cool, come on out and do it. So we ripped this show, and Eric happened to be in the crowd, and we mentioned when we were playing, like, hey, we need a vocalist, and like, he's like this skinny little cute dude, and we're like, he came up to us after the show, and he's like, hey man, I hear you guys need a vocalist. I'd love to try out. So we tried him out, and the rest is history. You can actually hear his vocal skills on our latest album, Rot, that we dropped back on July 15th. That was our third album. We put out, our first album was self-titled. Our second album was called Worm Dust. We recorded those with Steve Haynes at Poseidon Records. Our last album, Rot, we recorded with Nick Ginn and, I'm sorry Andy, but I'm going to butcher your last name, Andrew Dimitrishin, at Schoolhouse. That one turned out amazing. So yeah, we've got some shows coming up. We are playing in Waterloo on September 29th. With Spook the Beast for their album release. We have a show then a couple days later on October 3rd in Guelph with Hexus. We've got a show October 13th in Ajax. We just picked up a show November 9th in Hamilton. And we've got, I believe, the only one after that is December 15th in Hamilton with Lover's Teeth. If you haven't checked them out, check them out. They're a great band. We've played a few shows with them now. A lot of fun. Additionally to that, we will be heading to the studio in November. We've got a new 3 tracks to lay down and release to the world. And if you've liked what we've put out so far, come check them out, man. It's going to be great. Okay, so what do I like the most about being a musician? So the obvious answer is the fact that I get the chance to put out to the world, to the masses, things that I create, things that came from my head that I love. I get to share with people, and people come and see me to do that. Sometimes it's 5 people, sometimes it's 50 people, sometimes it's 500 people. It doesn't matter. I get to share what I love doing with people that I love, putting it out to the masses, out to the world. Aside from that, it's nice just to get out and to network, if you will, with people in the industry, to see what these other bands are doing. Let's put it into perspective. We just came out of the pandemic, and for 2 years there was no shows, very few shows. So really, we were sharing our music with the 5 guys in the band. So when that ended, it was so nice to get out and just showcase to the Hamilton area what the hell we've been up to the last few years. And to see the handful of people that might really get off on what we're doing, really like what we're putting out there, it kind of makes it worth it. It's nice to see that people connect with what we're doing. And also, like I said, it's also nice to see to network with these other bands and see what they're doing. So we follow. There's bands that we've been playing with for almost the entire 10 years that we've been a band, to see not only how we've changed over those 10 years, how they've changed over those 10 years, and it's nice to just make those relationships. It's people always say, oh, the scene's not what it used to be. So it's nice to make those connections within the scene and to hold on to it and have that camaraderie, if you will. Let's be honest, the type of music that Absorb produces, it's not for everybody. And the fact that we get to share it with some people, it really means a lot to us. At least it means a lot to me anyway. And it's nice that I get to see what these other bands are doing, and it's just nice to get out, relationship building. Just there's a lot of great people out in this genre, and it's nice to meet them all. Yeah, that's probably my favorite thing. My least favorite thing, it's obvious. I'm the drummer. It's tearing out your gear, loading it out, setting it up, playing the show, tearing it down, bringing it back. That's the downside. But there's more to it. That's the easy answer. Lately, the rising cost of things, the cost of being a musician, it's hard. We don't make a lot of money. We don't do it for the money. Let me clarify that. But it's hard for us to, we want to bring out the best possible product we can bring to the people. And that includes merchandising, that includes bringing our albums. These things, the prices is only going up. which unfortunately means we have to charge more for it. That is kind of a downside to the business, if you will. That's another area that I don't really like. But, I mean, it is what it is, the world we live in. But, again, I want to try and focus on the positives. It's a great time. I have fun. It's what I love to do. Yeah, just putting my creations out there. Again, I'm not very good at what I do. But it's nice that people like to come and see it. All right, favorite food. So, my grandmother, my grandmother and my grandfather on my mom's side were, rest in peace, Ukrainian. So my favorite food is cabbage rolls, otherwise known as holubtsi. But you got to do it right. There's a very big difference between what we call cabbage rolls in Canada to what cabbage rolls actually are. The way I have always grown up on them, the way my baba made them, to the way my mom made them, to the way I now make them. It's heavy on the rice for the filling. It is only pork. There is no beef in cabbage rolls. So you will have bacon, you will have you cook down ribs that will go into it, or even ground pork. Salt, pepper, garlic, onion, just a little bit of garlic, onion, dill. If dill is not in your cabbage rolls, you're not having cabbage rolls. Then you will take your cabbage, you will roll them to the size of about maybe 2 of my thumbs. Wrap them up, put them in your pan. Tomato juice, not tomato sauce. If you're using sauce, I'm sorry, you're doing it wrong. It's tomato juice only. Cover them up, roasting pan, in the oven, 2-3 hours. Out you come, down your throat. Everybody's happy. Thank you very much. Okay, useless talent. I am big into World War II history, which it's not really. It's a fairly significant portion of human history. But what I enjoy getting out of it is studying the human nature, the what drove people to do the things they did. So I just absorb, and there's that word again, just about everything I can with World War II and the human nature and what made people tick back then and what made those significant instances in life happen. Very useless knowledge. I will read the most useless piece of information you have. There's a book called Human Smoke, which was nothing more than correspondence, intercepted intelligence letters that really meant nothing, but there was a book full of them, and I read it, and just things like that, just any useless information about a fairly significant portion of human life, of history. Yeah, just the human condition and what drove people to do some pretty ugly things. It's very interesting to me. Does not translate into a lot of real world use. So yeah, I would say that's my personal useless talent. If you want to talk about it sometime, hit me up. I urge everybody out there to go check out what Steve Reniewick's got with the Stronger Than Ever videos. He's putting out great content. He loves the scene. He loves music. He loves what he does. The proof is in the pudding. He's got 101 videos out at the moment. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Go back, check him out. Some real cool stuff that he's put out. And if you're really missing out if you're not checking him out. Steve Reniewick, Stronger Than Ever videos. Do it.